Hey, Rick, what did you eat last night?
Jellyfish, Kate.
What?
I know.
On purpose?
What'd you say?
On purpose?
Yes, on purpose.
Wow.
Trust me, I know. And I know this is rich, considering my fish saga, right?
Yeah.
I've been feeling about fish. So I mentioned on the podcast before that I had gone to Waikiki and went to Iron Chef Morimoto's restaurant there.
Yeah.
And I think it's just called Morimoto Asia. And I got basically on the menu, they had jellyfish. Super amazing. I was a little nervous because I've never had it, but it's basically jellyfish.
That was bold of you.
Thank you. And I thought, how is this going to taste? And it's really similar to calamari, that it tends to have a chewy flavor. But calamari, when it's cooked right, can just be super delicate and not too chewy. But jellyfish was just served raw. It wasn't cooked at all. And then it was really in this simple yuzu soy, and yuzu is a citrus fruit. So it had a citrus soy sauce. It had ginger, garlic, chive, and tomato. And I ate that thing up, one right after the other.
One right after the other? Was it multiple little jellyfishes?
I'm sorry. No, I don't know how many it was, but they were thinly sliced.
I see.
Sort of like you might slice a carrot or Juliana pepper, and it was really, it was chewy, but not too chewy. And they said that it doesn't have a lot of intrinsic flavor, but the sauce is what made it really great. But it was really fun. I would totally do it again.
Wow. Wow. Good for you.
When they say jellyfish is dried out, that's what they use in a lot of soups as noodles, because when it's dried out and they rehydrate it, it stays even firmer than, I guess, when it's raw, and that acts as noodles in soup in China. But it was great. I know, right? How about you? What'd you eat?
I had an oven risotto.
Ooh, do tell.
Yeah, I had to buy arborio rice for something last year, and I can't think of what it was because I only needed like a quarter of a cup of it, and I had to buy one of those giant plastic containers like with a handle, you know? Have you seen those giant things of rice? And
yes.
So it was one of those, and I remember thinking at the time, well, obviously I'll be making risotto at some point. And now I wish I could remember what on earth I needed a quarter cup of arborio rice for that wasn't risotto, because it wasn't. But
totally.
And I don't make risotto, partly because I don't make white rice really very often, and I make this farotto that I really like, and so there's no reason for me to make it. But I decided I needed to use up some of this arborio rice because it was in a giant container, and I'm like, well, if you don't make risotto, it's going to sit here until, you're 70.
Yeah.
And so Ina
70.
Garten has a recipe where you throw everything in the Dutch oven and put it in the oven. And so that's what I did. It was the basic risotto stuff, like white wine and chicken stock and Parmesan cheese. And I think that might have been it. And, salt and pepper. And then at the end, you beat it for a little while to make it creamy. And then you add maybe some more, probably the Parmesan then, I'm guessing. And then some peas. And that was basically it. So I think it would be classified as probably a faux risotto since it's done in the oven. But I wouldn't have known the difference. It was really tasty.
Wow. That's amazing. And I'm a fan of just throwing everything in one thing and letting it go.
Yes, and it was a great use of the Dutch oven. It was one of those great examples of where that really works.
We could do a show on all the things that you buy that you only need a cup of and then sit in your cabinet for like a year.
Oh, my Lord, right? I bet you every single person listening can relate to that.
Yeah. That one thing, that one spice that costs like $1 gazillion and you only use once.
Right? Or then you're like, well, I'm not going to buy it just for this. And you leave it out and then you're like, I should have bought it.
Totally should. Exactly. That sounds great.
It was. Hello and welcome to another episode of You Won't Believe What I Ate Last Night. I'm Kate.
And I'm Rick.
And this is our ongoing conversation about food, health, weight management, and our endeavor to be and stay healthy in a really tasty world.
With love, kindness, and compassion towards ourselves and others.
So, Rick, I have a question I have been dying to ask you.
Yes, Kate.
Have you used your Instant Pot that's been sitting on your counter for the better part of a year yet?
Yes, Kate, I have. That's a very good question.
Yay! So everybody, welcome to Instant Pot Part 2, where Rick is going to report back on some of the questions that he was asking about in our Part 1. And we're going to have some more tips, tricks, ideas, and recipes for you about the Instant Pot. So what have you done?
I've done a lot of things. Here's what I'm going to say overall to you. I agree. From our previous conversation, I'm going to make an overall statement that yes, actually, it does make a lot of things super easy. And it does make things easier to clean up. I love that about it. So let's start with the very first thing. You said for me to start with eggs, which I did.
Right, which classically, if anyone listening knows about the Instant Pot, it's the first thing everybody always does, and it's the thing everyone always talks about. Eggs, they're so easy to peel. That's the best thing to do. Start with eggs because they're perfect. Okay, go ahead.
So I did the classic Instant Pot method, which you had told me about, the 5, 5, and 5, right? Mm-hmm. So you cook them for 5, you let the pressure release for 5, and then you soak them in an ice bath for 5. So I did that. And the first batch I made, while they cooked well, they tasted good, but let me tell you, they were a nightmare to peel.
I am so bewildered by this. The whole point of steaming them the way the Instant Pot does is that they peel really easily. It's so funny to me that happened.
Now, mind you, whenever I cook them just in a regular stovetop thing, I would just boil them, turn it off, and I'll take them out, put them in a dish, let them cool, then shove them in my fridge, and then they always peeled well. So cut to where I've actually made eggs probably 4 or 5 times, and I would say of all the batches, probably like 70% of them have been hard to peel. But the last batch, half the eggs are really hard to peel, and the other half were super easy to peel. So that I can't explain because I feel like from what you said, I'm odd man out right now.
I just can't imagine. And you guys, we've had conversations with this off air where I've gone through. I'm like, okay, tell me exactly what you did,
and I did
step by step. And he's not doing anything weird. I cannot imagine. I've probably made eggs in there. Gosh, I don't even know, 50 times maybe over the year and a half that I've had it. Because sometimes I'll just do 2, for that meal. And I would say that maybe 3 times I've had issues where either they burst in there or they were for some reason hard to peel. And I find that they're really forgiving, even if I don't soak them in the ice bath, but I just run them under cold water until they're cool enough to handle, because I want to eat them warm, because I'll sometimes do soft boiled, so I don't want them to cool. And I want the yolk to stay soft. They're all still easy. We're going to have to be in the same place and do them together and find out what the story is here, because I just cannot imagine what the deal is. If anyone out there has the answer to this, please let us know, because I'm so curious.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So going back to my beginning point that I made about everything being easier and ultimately quicker, here's what I loved is I came home from a trip. And you wake up the next day after you get back and you just don't want to spend a lot of time doing things. Mm-hmm. So it really occurred to me that I don't have to. So the first thing I did is I made eggs. That happened really quickly. Then you know how I like to have quinoa around? So I made that really quickly, and that was super easy. So I loved that. And then there was also that morning that I'm like, I really wanted a smoothie. But I don't have any almond milk. I have almonds, but I don't have to wait to soak my almonds, because by the time the almonds are soaked, breakfast will be over. So I was actually able to put the almonds in the pressure cooker instead of letting them soak, and that takes 4 minutes. So by the time I had everything else prepped for my smoothie, the almonds were done. I could make the milk. So in that sense, it really made me eat better, because I was able to do things quickly, rather than if I'm that whole drudgery that set in, I have to do all these steps. So I don't want to do it all right now. So that was really great, because it really got me into the mode of getting back into my rhythm of eating well, eating better, far quicker after a trip. So that was pretty exciting.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, might not have the answer to this, but in our last one, you had been like, how is it actually quicker? Because some of the things, it doesn't necessarily appear that it's quicker and more convenient. And my answer was, it just is. I didn't really have. So can you answer that any better now that you're closer to the question and answer?
Yeah, to me, it's the little things. Let's take, for instance, quinoa. Quinoa cooked really easily, really quickly, and the cleanup was really easy, and the setup was really easy. I just found it, and maybe it's just a couple minutes here and there, but I didn't feel like I had this sense of having to labor to get anything done. Definitely the almond milk, I just felt obviously I didn't have to soak them, so it cooked them quicker, which is quicker than stovetop. Yeah, it is just quicker, I think. It's quicker cleanup, it's quicker setup, and it's just less hassle. Like when the quinoa's on the stove, I check it. I obsess with it because it's not perfect sometimes. Sometimes it'll cook in 12 minutes. And then other times it cooks in 10 minutes. And then, sometimes you have to add more water back in. I'm like, oh my God. So I can just literally set it and walk away. So I think that's how it's quicker.
Mm-hmm. Great.
And so with the, going back to the almonds, we had talked last time because I had made my almond milk the first time. And I just soaked regular store-bought almonds in water and made my almond milk over there. And we were both sort of in agreement that 5 days was the general length of time that it might last. So this time I didn't soak the almonds. I just cooked them in the pressure cooker. And they came out really well. I thought it was really great. And I still agree that 5 days for me was still really good. It's how long the almond milk lasts after I made it in the pressure cooker.
So it started to taste funky after that?
Yeah. I'm like,
good to know.
I didn't want it to go past 5 days because I felt like it was on the edge of like, oh, I'm so not going to want this tomorrow.
And do you use blanched peeled almonds or do you use skin on almonds?
These ones I use the skin on almonds. I have not done the blanched almonds, the blanched peeled almonds. So
because that's the ones that I did that seem to last forever.
Yeah.
So I wonder if it's really the peel that's more the issue.
Yeah,
that's
totally.
interesting.
Could
interesting.
be.
All right, good. Thank you. Thanks for that update. That's awesome.
Yeah. So ultimately, quinoa is super great, and also I made it by the broth that I put in the quinoa. I did pot within a pot because what I like about the Instant Pot is just easier to make small quantities. So I did pot within a pot, and the broth I used was just that sort of flavored broth that we like, that flavored like bouillon and better than bouillon and all those other fake vegetarian broths. So that really helped. It brought a lot of flavor. So that's super easy. That's super quick.
So can you remind me of how you do your quinoa? Because I was thinking about this the other day, because the one time I made quinoa in there, it was really mushy, and I only cooked it for 1 minute, and it was mushy. And for you've had an opposite experience to that too, which is weird, and it makes me wonder if it's in the release. I don't remember how long I left it to sit after that minute was up. I don't remember if I let it do a natural release or a quick release. So Can you remind us of your quinoa recipe? Because that's a good one.
I've done it a couple ways. So I definitely cook it for a minute. In the beginning stages, I let it release for 10 minutes naturally, and that was okay. But this time, the last couple of times, I did 15, and I sort of feel like 15 is pretty perfect for me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
I'm going to have to try it again because yours wasn't mushy, right?
No, it still held together really well.
Yeah.
Maybe this is like the egg drama in reverse.
Yeah, it's so strange to me that we would have such different experiences.
Yes,
it's
totally.
so bizarre. But this happens all the time. Someone will write an Instant Pot recipe and you read the comments, and then there's always a couple people being like, I had this weird experience, and they did. They weren't doing anything weird. They're like, I followed it, but it burned or blah, blah, and it's like, So there is an element of, to the Instant Pot, I suppose.
Yeah, totally. And so going back to like getting home from a trip and how easy it was. So within 45 minutes, I had like 3 staples, the eggs, the quinoa, and the almond milk done that I didn't have to think about, and it allowed me to eat healthy. So I think that was pretty spectacular. And the cleanup was super simple each time. So I really loved that.
That is awesome. And the funny thing is, like, I often think this, in theory, you probably could have done that in the same amount of time on the stove, except for the soaking of the almonds. Yeah. And yet there's something about it that makes it more convenient. And it is a little hard to pinpoint, but you've hit on some of the good points, I think, but there's still something else.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. And I think for me, like I'd said, it's that walk away quality. You just leave it. You don't obsess about it. Because even my eggs, I'm like, oh, I have to go over halfway through. Did any of them break? I'm like, I get obsessed about them. Mm-hmm. So here's the other thing I made, Kate. So as we talked on our last podcast about summer fare, I had decided that I was going to make veggie burgers out of azuki beans. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to make them. But again, I was just like, I'm sitting here, I'm like, oh man, I meant to make them today, but I forgot to soak my beans overnight. So I'm like, I can't do it. But I was like, no, wait a minute. You can do it. So I popped them in the instant pot, and it took, 25 minutes to cook, and I think they released for 15. Mm-hmm. And by the time all of that was done, I had everything else chopped and made for the veggie burger. So then I just mixed it all together and made my veggie burgers. And again, that's something else I wouldn't have done if I had to soak the beans and then cook the beans and then stir the beans so they don't stick to the bottom of the pot on top of the stove. Plus the added value as summer's coming that I don't have this pot on top of my stove heating my entire apartment.
Yeah, I find there is great value to not having to use the stove or oven in particular when it gets into summer. That's really helpful. There's been a couple times that I've noticed that recently. Have you tried hummus yet, or have you soaked your garbanzos in there? Or
I have not.
So that's another thing that'll be great for you because that you do soak beans a lot for various dishes, so you'll be able to do that all the time with it. That's awesome.
And this made me think, you'll appreciate this, because I was watching the special on End of Days and all these people that prep for End of Days and have a fallout shelter. And I thought, they have beans. They have canned beans. And then I thought, oh my gosh, I could have tons and tons and tons of the raw beans. But then I thought I could have my Instant Pot down there. But then I thought, what if there's no power?
I was about to say, is there power in end of days?
We don't know. And there are people who have entire shelters with a generator and stuff to cook on that they can cook for months. So it really got me into this whole story because, I think about beans a lot for my end of days scenario of like when the time comes, I'm like, oh, beans are a great thing to have around, right? Because you can just eat them on the run. So I'm going to give that more thought, Kate.
Okay. I do think there's also, along those lines, there's a big tiny home movement, and I think that for people that are living in a small space, I think the Instant Pot can really take the place of a lot of things. It's pretty amazing.
Now,
and it sounds like they're giving us money or something, and they're not. I mean,
I wish.
They should be.
Did you know? Hey, Kate, did you know that tofu may be over 2,000 years old?
What?
I said, hey, Kate. It is believed that over 2,000 years ago, a Chinese cook accidentally discovered it by curdling soy milk.
Oh my God, you mean that it has existed? I thought you meant that the actual tofu that I get in the store is 2,000 years old.
No.
Okay.
That's funny.
All right. I still didn't know that, no. But I'm far less shocked.
Hey, Kate, did you know that when you freeze tofu, it turns yellow?
No.
Hey, Kate, did you know you could freeze tofu?
I have never thought about it, no.
Yeah, they say as tofu freezes, it takes on a yellowish hue. But as you thaw it, the tofu returns to its original color. So interesting.
Well, good, because we all use tofu for the color, so that's important. That it makes it change its color.
Hey, Kate, did you know that the United States grows half of the soybeans produced in the world?
No.
Yeah, that blew me away.
Wow.
Do you still have your slow cooker?
No, I actually gave my slow cooker away when I got the Instant Pot because I needed the counter space.
Interesting. Because I put my slow cooker in my cabinet and I'm keeping it because I think, there's always that one time a year where you need to put something out on a table and keep it warm. So I guess I'm keeping it for that. You know
that the Instant Pot has a slow cooker function, right? The Instant Pot is actually called a multi-cooker.
You're right. No, I forgot about that.
Because it's also effectively a crock pot. But here's the thing, and I think I might have mentioned this last time. The Instant Pot is not the highest rated multi-cooker on the market.
You did.
Because its slow cooker function isn't awesome. But it would be good enough to do what you just said. But apparently something that would cook for 6 hours in like a normal crock pot isn't done in that amount of time on the slow cooker function.
Okay.
Here. So you haven't tried yogurt yet either, have you?
No, it's on my list.
That's another one that you'll totally dig.
I have just a little bit of yogurt left that I may try it this week or next week.
Yeah. I recently made Instant Pot lasagna.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. So there's toys that go with the Instant Pot, certain tools that are helpful to have. And one of them that I was thinking about getting and didn't, and my mother was like, you must have that. And she just bought it for me off Amazon as we were talking, is a 7-inch springform pan, which is used for the Instant Pot cheesecake, which is another classic thing that apparently turns out incredibly well that I haven't tried yet. And the lasagna, which is another super popular thing. And it's funny because it's no quicker. And I don't know that it's better necessarily, but you can make this cute little 7-inch round one that is,
quite often enough.
Yeah, 4 servings maybe, depending on what else is going on. And it was really delicious. And the recipe called for a sauce that also is made in the Instant Pot. But when I read through it, they're just using the Instant Pot as a pan at that point. So I didn't feel that it was going to be more convenient to use the Instant Pot to make the sauce in than to use the stovetop. So I made the sauce on the stovetop anyway. And then you just layer it all in and cook it. And it was truly fantastic, and it would have been the exact same fantasticness in the oven. So it's possible. I don't know that it's necessarily worth it, but I'll probably do it again because it's convenient and it's a good size.
Nice. That's great.
And you don't have to heat up the house with the oven.
That's another huge thing. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I'm going to throw in that I made was black lentils. So black lentils is one of my staples.
I have a black lentil story to tell you.
Oh, sweet. So I just have done it a couple ways. I've done it pretty simply. I've just made black lentils and kept them in the fridge because I like to sprinkle them over a salad sometimes. I've made them one other way where I put the lentil in the Instant Pot with some onion, with some ghee, with some garlic, and obviously broth. And then I would throw in some turmeric, generally some cumin and some coriander, some spices. And I would let it go. And when that was done at the very end, I would just stir in spinach and let it wilt. And then sometimes I would make that same recipe, but in the Instant Pot, I would add kale because obviously the kale needs to cook down a little bit more. So it's a super easy dish. And again, because you can control the quantity really easily in Instant Pot, it was great to have like 2 servings of that throughout the week. And again, 1 pot to clean up, which I really loved.
What ratio do you use of beans to water, and then how long did you cook them? For the black lentils, I mean.
Gosh, that's a great question. I don't remember. Let me see if I can pull up my recipe.
Yeah, if it's easy, fine. If not, you could tell me later.
Okay.
So you told me about black lentils on a couple months ago on one of our What We're Cooking podcasts, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I immediately looked up a recipe for Instant Pot black dal, and I thought, oh my God, I'm so excited. I want to make that. And I did it, I think, during the episode. So I haven't found black lentils in the store since we had that conversation. They just don't have them in the places that I normally shop, and I hadn't gone out of the way yet. So pause on that story. I was just in London, and there's this Indian restaurant that I read about that I really wanted to go to called Dishoom, and it supposedly has just this really great Indian food in London. And we tried to go, and the line was too long, and we couldn't go because we were seeing a play. But because we were running late, we had looked at the menu and decided what we were getting, and I saw that they had a black dal on there, and I was like, oh my gosh, how interesting. And it was their signature dish, and so I was so excited to try it, and I was really disappointed that we didn't get to go. All right, so end of that story. Cut to, I finally this week get black lentils, and I decide to make this. So just last night, I made the Instant Pot black dal, and as I was reading the recipe, it was based on this person's experience eating that black dal at Dishoom in London.
That's awesome.
So they created apparently a 24-hour black dal recipe that I'm totally going to try. You put it in your Dutch oven in the oven for 24 hours.
Wow.
And then they created an Instant Pot version of it. And they said they did a side-by-side taste test, and they even showed you pictures. And clearly the 24-hour one is way better because the tomato paste cooks down. And obviously, that's going to be different and better.
Yeah.
And they were like, they're both really good, but, the 24-hour one is smoky and deep and rich, and the Instant Pot one is a little light and creamy, but still delicious. And I will tell you, I made it, and it was super delicious.
Oh, that's so exciting.
And the thing is, though, tomato products tend to burn and scorch. And so I had this thing that I've only had one other time, and it was when it involved tomatoes, is that the pot didn't come to pressure. It thought it did, but it didn't. And so when the little pokey thing is supposed to stick up, the little metal thing telling you that it's at pressure,
Right.
It never did. It was just emitting steam, but the countdown started and it thought it was cooking. So my pot malfunctions. It doesn't tell me when something's burning. It just continues to cook and doesn't pressurize, which is bad. So I was paying attention and I caught it. So I turned it off and took it off and I stirred it. And sure enough, all the sugars from the tomato paste, I guess. And there was tons of liquid in there too. There was lots of water and chicken stock. So I don't know why it burned, but there's so much sugar, that must be it. But it had all caught on the bottom. And so I scraped it up and it was just scorched a little bit. And it did actually add a delicious caramelized flavor. I caught it before it turned acrid. So I then stirred it all up, added extra water, put it back on, and then it worked.
Wow, that sounds amazing. You're going to have to give me that black dal recipe.
Yes, I know.
Good for you,
I just
Kate.
printed out the 24-hour one too. So that was super fun. So I am a fan, and the black dal was delicious. I can't wait to use it. And it's so pretty and it's cute. I can't wait to use it in other contexts.
And speaking of burning things in your Instant Pot, I attempted to make my first fish recipe in the Instant Pot. Yes.
Oh, no.
Well, it's so interesting what you just said, because I was making a curried fish. So I had this piece of fish. It was frozen, and I read a lot about, how long the fresh fish is supposed to cook in the Instant Pot versus the frozen fish. Okay. So I decided to start somewhere in between based on the size of my fillet, because whatever the size of fillet I had bought in the store never matched any of the recipes. So I made the curry sauce, and I basically started by doing I did the saute function, and I did onions, garlic, ginger, and the chili pepper. And then I let that go. And then I added the cumin, the coriander, the turmeric, fenugreek, and pepper. So that was really good. And then I let that go for a little bit. And then I added a little bit of broth, right, just to deglaze all of that. So that worked really well. And then I added the curry milk. And then enough as
Do you mean coconut milk?
Coconut, Jesus, God, yeah, coconut milk. Then
Although it should be renamed curry milk because that is ultimately what I use it for. Yeah.
Totally. And so I added the coconut milk. Oh, and then I added tomatoes. And I didn't have fresh tomatoes, so I added canned tomatoes. And so I put all it in. And the liquid content, the amount of liquid looked really good. It was covering the fish. I felt like I had enough in there. And then I was going to cook it for 4 minutes. So I put 4 minutes and I go away. And then all I hear is this alarm going from the Instant Pot. And I come over and it's just flashing burn, 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 burn.
That's what it's supposed to do and mine doesn't. Yeah.
Right.
That's great, though, that it did.
Yes. I was so panicked. I just opened the Instant Pot. I released the pressure and opened it. So I actually could not see. I knew it had pressurized and then it got into the cooking mode. I have no idea how long I actually cooked the fish for. My instinct, it was probably about 3 minutes by the time I yanked it out. So I yanked it out and then I, of course, took the fish out and looked at the bottom of the pot. Nothing was burned. It was so weird. Nothing was stuck to the bottom. Because what you had just said, I thought, oh, maybe it's because of all the tomatoes I added, right? And maybe all the sugar settled. But there was nothing stuck to the bottom of the pot. So that being said, I took it out. And overall, it was still really good. The fish was just a smidge undercooked in the thickest part. So I just I ate the end parts, which of course cooked wonderfully and were really juicy. And then the thicker parts I ate the next day and I just heated them up in a little frying pan and it was all good. But I have to say...
Well, that's promising. I don't know what the hell happened, but that's promising for fish. That's exciting.
It is promising. So I think next time I shop for fish, I'm actually going to shop for fish that's comes closer to the ones that the size, the fillets that they always talk about in recipes, so I can start to get more of a gauge of how long fish should cook for. I had actually done catfish, which isn't traditionally used in curry, but I wanted to start with that because I feel like it's a really forgiving fish. It already has a lot of moisture. It absorbs things really easily. So I thought, well, that seems like one of the best fish that is going to be hard to ruin in the Instant Pot, even if I cook it too long.
Yeah,
so,
good logic.
Yeah, so all in all, it was a really good experience. But I am excited about having more fish fillets in my freezer now, which I'm generally not.
Yeah, I know. That is very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I can pop out a couple of fish fillets once or twice a week, that'd be sweet.
Yeah, that's awesome. The other thing that sort of didn't pressurize for me was this butter chicken thing, and it's weird. It didn't. I don't know. I don't remember if it burned and stuck or not, but it was just weird. So you do have to keep an eye on it and make sure the little valve pops up, because in my case, that's what it does when it burns. Is it doesn't say burn, it just doesn't pressurize, but the machine thinks
terrible.
It is. The other thing that I made, it also involved that little 7-inch springform pan, which is a frittata. I made a frittata in my Instant Pot, and it was amazing because the 7-inch springform pan looks tiny. When you first get it, you're like, oh my God, this is the tiniest little pan. Because I think a normal one is probably 12 inches, so it's really quite a bit smaller. And then this recipe for the frittata, I'm like, there is no way all of this is going to fit in this tiny little springform pan. But it did. I cooked down an entire bunch of asparagus, several handfuls of greens, and 2 large leeks. So I had a huge amount of cooked vegetables, a dozen eggs that I beat, a half a cup of cottage cheese. Most of the egg things, the beaten egg things in the Instant Pot call for cottage cheese, which is interesting because it must do something to the texture because you'd never know it was in there, but it was amazing. And then like a half a cup of milk or something like that.
Oh my gosh, that is a lot of stuff.
I know. And then a bunch of cheese. And I was like, there is no way. And it all totally fit. And then it was amazing. It's so good. So I can't wait to have a bunch of people over to brunch and make that again.
Ooh, nice. That sounds really great.
Yeah, it was terrific.
I also did farro. I didn't really make a farro recipe. I just cooked farro straight because I like to have farro in my fridge also to throw on top of my salads. Again, another super easy thing to knock out and have for the week.
I love how farro turns out in there.
Do you remember when you forced me to buy my Instant Pot when I was in Sicily?
I do.
I was just reading that year that you made me buy it. Well, not that year, but Instant Pot broke all records on Amazon Prime Day because that's where I bought the Instant Pot. It broke all records in 2018. It was one of their biggest selling products, like they couldn't keep up. and they had to find more people to sort of, I guess, sell or deliver the Instant Pot. One of the things I thought was interesting is that the person that is in charge of whatever Instant Pot on or managing Instant Pot on all the sites and reading the reviews, he says he reads every negative review because he wants to be able to incorporate all the issues or problems that people come up with and people may find. And they try to come out with a new version of an Instant Pot every 12 to 16 months. Isn't that interesting?
Wow. Yes. And you and I don't have the same version. Mm-mm. Mine is a slightly more sophisticated version that doesn't work in some ways. That is terrific. And I would like to end with a really great customer service story about Instant Pot, which is about Star, my friend Star, who's the one who introduced me to it. The first time I had Instant Pot anything was she made carnitas in it one time. And I was like, what is that?
I remember you talking about those carnitas.
Yes. Oh, my God. I'm still dying to make those. I still haven't made them because I have to get humanely raised pork, which is hard to find and very expensive. But anyway, a long time went by, like a year went by before I decided I wanted one after that, but then I did. So she's had hers for many years. And one time, while she was using it, a dent appeared in the outside of the Instant Pot. Everything else was fine, but obviously that's concerning, right? And so she looked online at all the forums that exist, and people are like, sometimes that happens, it's fine. And she was like, I don't know. So she contacted the Instant Pot people, and she had the Instant Pot for probably, I'm going to say maybe 5 years. She was an early adopter, so she got one of the first ones, definitely 4 years. It was certainly well out of any kind of warranty or anything like that. And they were like, could you send us a photo? And she did. And she said, I can tell you that it happened while cooking. That's all I know. And they were like, that shouldn't happen. And they sent her a new one.
Really?
Yes. They had no obligation to do that at that point, but they did. So we do like the Instant Pot customer service.
Because it's like an indentation isn't good anywhere.
Right. And you feel like if something's happening in there that's going to suck the metal in from the outside of the pot, like it doesn't feel super safe.
No, not at all.
In terms of that degree of pressure.
If we were in Rachel Ray's audience this morning, we could have gotten an Instant Pot. She was doing an Instant Pot thing, and she gave everyone in her audience an Instant Pot.
Oh, my God. You know, the thing that's nuts is if I had two, I would probably keep both because there's been times and I'm like, if I had a second one, I would do this simultaneously.
Agreed, 100%.
And on those forums, people do. I read because when I first got mine, I read a ton of Facebook things and that. And people are like, I use my second Instant Pot. You know, people definitely have multiple ones.
It's deep, Kate. It's deep.
Well, I'm delighted, Rick, that you have finally joined the cult.
I am too.
And we will keep you updated, folks.
Thanks for listening. And remember, follow us, Facebook, Instagram. And as always, send us an email with your thoughts, questions for the podcast. And, remember, rate and review us. Your opinion is really what's helped grow this podcast the most. So we're so appreciative of that. Thanks for listening.
Thanks. Bye-bye.